In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Get going. I know that you don't want to talk about movies you haven't seen.
Right.
Have you seen the Alien Covenant yet?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So here we go.
The Abercast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Abercast. This is episode 36. You know who I am by now. And on the phone, we have no stranger to the show. He's returning, Mr. Robert Sullivan IV. Robert is a Mason, historian, author, lawyer, and the first time he was on was way back in episode 3, which is just under a year ago. Robert, thank you.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on the Abercast. It's great to be back with you. My pleasure, and I look forward to this evening's show.
Yeah, so I know that you just released your third book. You have out of the three of them, you have the Royal Arch of Enoch, Cinema Symbolism, a guide to esoteric imagery in popular movies, and now you just published Cinema Symbolism 2, more esoteric imagery in popular movies. So congratulations on the new book.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. 3 books and Cinema Symbolism 2. The print edition came out about 2 months ago, and the ebook, the Kindle, the Nook, that came out about a week ago or so.
And from what I understand, you are reprinting. You've reprinted your first 2 books as well on your own label.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, John. The Royal Arch of Enoch and Cinema Symbolism in the last 6 months were republished by me as second editions. The company that I was using to do them, I'm no longer in business with, and I essentially created my own publishing house. I call it Deadwood Publishing. Deadwood was a TV series on HBO. It was one of my all-time favorite television shows, and I just like the sound of Deadwood Publishing. I thought it had a nice ring to it, and plus it also has sort of the double meaning of print editions. You know, sometimes you hear it as slang as being called, the Deadwood edition.
Yep.
Because of the paper from the trees, of course. So I really like the ring of it. I like the double meaning, and I created that, and I republished both books as second editions, which they're essentially the same as the first edition. I just made a few re-edits and revisions in them, but they're essentially the exact same book as the first edition. But yeah, they're out. You can get them now, the print edition and the Kindle, the ebooks. They were all released within the last 6 months.
Awesome. Sorry, I just got to adjust your. I just got to adjust your volume there real quick. Okay, so that's fixed.
It's fine.
So before we get started, I like to, when I have people on, I like to give them plenty of space to promote their stuff. So where can we go to get any of your books? I think that there's a robertsullivaniv.com out there and Amazon. Do you have any preferred method of folks getting your book?
Yeah, absolutely. You were close. The easiest way to find me and find my books is just go to my website, which is my name. My full name is Robert W. Sullivan IV. So that's my website. Yeah, you almost had it. Yeah, it's www.robertwsullivan, the letter I, the letter V.com for the fourth, robertwsullivaniv.com. From there, there's information about me, links to my social media, and of course, events and appearance page about other upcoming shows that I'm doing, radio shows, TV shows, and of course, links to purchase the book, or the books, I should say. They're on Amazon. They're on the Amazon Kindle. They're on Barnes & Noble. They're on Barnes & Noble Nook. The ebook is on numerous. I mean, this is for all three books. This is for Royal Arch, Cinema Symbolism, and CS2. You can get them on places like eBook Mall, Intera. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Kobo. So there is, they're on, all the major retailers online. You can get them overseas, like on the Amazon UK, site, they have them. Same thing with Australia, same thing with Canada. So the books are, on all the major online retailers. Again, just the simplest way to do it is there's links all over the places. Just go to my website, www.robertwsullivan.com. Links to buy the books, upcoming shows, events and appearances, more information about me, links to social media. Check it out.
All right. So, you're a real interesting guy, and I re-listened to some of our last show together, and you kind of got started in all this kind of like out of like a study of Freemasonry, right? That's kind of like where you got into the Royal Arch of Enoch.
Well, that's right. It started for me. All this really kind of started. I mean, as a child growing up, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I was born in 71.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a fan of stuff like, the old Leonard Nimoy In Search of shows, things like that. As a kid, I was always interested in the unknown, the mysterious, UFOs, cryptozoology, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. That stuff always had a special place in my heart. And I still follow it today. It's just something that always fascinated me. But for me, really, when I got over to England, I was a student over there for my junior year of college. I spent my junior year abroad at Oxford University at St. Catherine's College. And I never matriculated there. I just spent a year there as an associate student. But it was really over there that I got introduced to the idea of the Hermetic influence, the Hermetic tradition and its influence on material culture, secret societies, the occult, people like John Dee, Francis Bacon, Giordano Bruno. And it's really fascinated me. So I just began researching it and making notes and, writing about it and talking about it. And in the mid-1990s, I was invited to join a Masonic lodge. I applied, I got invited, and I became a Freemason. I come from a long line of Maryland Masons. And from there, I continued to write, do some research, and I took 20 years. I parlayed this into my first book, which was the Royal Arch of Enoch, which documented this undiscovered historical anomaly. And then what really happened, John, was the last chapter of that book talked about Masonic sort of and solar imagery in popular movies veiled under the surface. I talked about movies such as Being There, the National Treasure films, the Da Vinci Code movie. And this is something that really fascinated me, was this arcane imagery and themes and iconography going on in movies. And I knew a little bit about this. I knew things like with the Star Wars movies, with the Joseph Campbell influence. I'd seen the Matrix movie, and obviously there was a heavy Gnostic influence about that. So when I got done writing Royal Arch of Enoch, I really kept on writing, and that became my first sort of movie book called Cinema Symbolism, a guide to esoteric imagery in popular movies, where I broke down movies such as The Exorcist, the Omen trilogy, Wizard of Oz, the Matrix films, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. And naturally, there was more movies that I wanted to talk about, but the book would have gone on and on. So I finished up. Yeah, right. I mean, I finished up Cinema Symbolism and went right into Cinema Symbolism 2, where I even break down more movies. It's really sort of a sequel. That's why I called it Cinema Symbolism 2 to the first movie. So yeah, I mean that's where I'm at, and those books are all out. You can get them, and right now I'm working on my first work of fiction, and I actually have already begun outlining Cinema Symbolism 3. Believe it or not.
That's awesome. So that's kind of like some background information. So let me let you know where I'm at right now, and this is why I feel like you're the perfect guest for me to talk to. I'm in the middle of doing 4 30-page comics, and they are all kind of reflective of 60s and 70s genre movies, Like I have like a vigilante story, like a taxi driver kind of thing, and I have a spaghetti western kind of thing, like an apocalypse now war story sort of thing, and then like it's gonna end in like a disaster movie sort of story. So it's like Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, this kind of stuff. So I was thrilled when I saw that you had a spaghetti western section in the new book. Yeah, and I was hoping that we could start there. I know that from what I believe you say the spaghetti westerns of Sergio Leone. So I don't know like how crazy you got into getting into the other guys like Corbucci or anybody like that. So, but yeah, I'm desperate to hear about these astrological and biblical archetypes in these Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns.
Absolutely. This is actually one of my favorite chapters in the book. The spaghetti western of Sergio Leone. These are some of my all-time favorite movies, especially The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I talk about in the book. It's a chapter. It's called the chapter's titled "Mystical Archetypes of the Old West," and I break down 5 movies in it. The Red River movie with John Wayne, which is really the personification of the male archetype in film. And then I got into the original Magnificent Seven movie with Yul Brynner, and of course, what's his name, Steve McQueen. That has a lot of archetypal imagery as well. But then I got into the 3 Sergio Leone movies, and Leone really he starts out sort of as like a fledgling novice with the first one, which is Fistful of Dollars. But then he really perfects it in the last one, which is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Those were really the movies that I took on, and what those movies are really akin to, the 3 Leone movies, is what I call in the book. I mean, it's really the only word I can really think, or the words I can think to describe it is, I say it's akin to Christian Kabbalism, where it's really these religious Roman Catholic esoteric themes going on in all 3 of those movies. And he starts it with the first movie, the A Fistful of Dollars, where you clearly have the Clint Eastwood character, the man with no name. I mean, he is clearly paralleling Christ archetype. I almost want to call him, I don't want to go so far as to call him a savior figure or a redeemer figure. That's sort of a mantle he doesn't pick up until the 3rd movie. But there's clearly this religious allegory going on where you have the Clint Eastwood character as this Christ figure. And in the first movie, he's going up against the evil, the clan, the one clan that's battling the other clan, the Baxters, and I think it's the Rojas, and the leader of that is sort of the satanic devil figure. I mean, the character is holding Marisol against her will.
Right.
Of course, it's the Clint Eastwood character who unifies her with her son Jesus or Jesus. So, I mean, you have the unification of Madonna and child by the Clint Eastwood character. This is clearly investing him as the solar figure. I mean, the savior figure, this Christ, archetype sort of imitation is probably the best word I could think for it. I mean, and then you have the whole scenery where he sort of fakes his own death and he goes into the subterranean crypt to recuperate and then, resurrects from the crypt. And he's certainly impervious to death at that point and takes on the Rojas character and defeats him. And like I said, it's really sort of this narrative of this savior, solar Christ figure archetype. I mean, you have the Clint Eastwood character, the blonde-haired, blue eyes. Jesus figure is really the best way I can describe it, battling this dark, evil lord. And then this is an exact same theme that he continues on in the next movie, which is For a Few Dollars More. And then you have the same sort of imagery going on. You have the same actor. I can't remember his name. He plays the villain in this as well. It's the same character or same actor who plays the Rojas villain. And I can't remember the actor's name, but in this, he's the villain in For a Few Dollars More. I mean, he gives the lecture in the church about a carpenter. I mean, clearly this is drawing forth Christ imagery. Only the carpenter he's talking about is a deceiver, not a redeemer. And you have the whole idea of, again, the Clint Eastwood character, the Clint Eastwood figure being sort of this Christ, imitator coming in to do battle with this evil figure. I like the Lee Van Cleef character, the black figure on the horse. Certainly this conjures, imagery from the Book of Revelation, who's coming on this revengeful mission to avenge the sister's death. And then you really have this deep allegory going on in this, with this Renaissance phenomenon called the art of memory, which is, using these esoteric devices to bring forth ideas of death, archetypal imagery. And this is what's going on in this movie with the chimes associated with the clock, the little pocket watch. So you have this whole, art of memory, subliminal, theme going on, where every time the chimes are heard, it's conjuring death. You have the showdowns going on, and it's this real Christian sort of theme drawing on, that he's using these music chimes to draw forth this biblical imagery symbolizing death, revenge, themes of that nature. But then by the time he gets to the third movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, this is where he's really gotten good at this. And you absolutely have this biblical imagery going on, clearly with, once again, the Clint Eastwood character being the Christ figure. I mean, you have, even when he's introduced in it, you have the angelic music playing behind him. You have the one scene at the end where he goes into the church of all things, and the one Confederate is dying, and he gives him his coat, and he gives him a cigarette, which is clearly an act of divine mercy, upon this dying soldier. And then you have the devil figure, which is, of course, Angel Eyes. This is the Lee Van Cleef character. Right. And, of course, that's, again, of a double meaning, Angel Eyes, but he's the devil. He runs the death camp. You don't make a pact with the devil because, Lee Van Cleef will betray you. At the beginning, he does the bidding of the one Confederate general, but then turns around and kills him. So he's a double dealer. He's the devil. And through this whole movie, they're dealing with the ugly character, which is, of course, original sin. And this is Tuco, who is mankind after the fall of Eden. And that's why he's ugly. He's in a perpetual state of sin. And the whole idea is you have Jesus, Clint Eastwood on the one hand, and the bad, the devil, vying for the soul of mankind, who is the ugly. So you have this entire play on this with the Tuco character, where it's God versus the devil, and they're constantly vying for mankind, who is the ugly. And again, he's called the ugly because it's symbolizing mankind after the fall of Eden, the casting out of Eden. So he's in a state of perpetual sin, in a state of ugliness. There's some very unique esoteric imagery going on in this. You have that going on, but then also you have some very astrological imagery going on, where clearly you have the Clint Eastwood character is the Jesus figure. I mean, he this is really the movie where he picks up the idea of the Redeemer, where he's trying to save Tuco. I mean, you clearly have references in this to Judas Iscariot with the noose.
Yeah,
Leone throws you a bone from time to time, as to what he's trying to do here. But then you have these very deep, astrological imagery going on. I don't want to give too much away because I want people to read the book, but I'll just wrap it up on this, John, where you have, with Eastwood being the savior figure, he's obviously the solar Christ figure, so he would represent the house of Leo. Then you have the devil figure. This is, of course, in mythology, the Set, Egyptian figure, the opposer of Osiris and Horus, the opposer of the sun. This would be the house of Scorpio. So Lee Van Cleef would be the house of Scorpio. And then, of course, the other fixed sign would be Tuco, who would be the sign of Aquarius. These are three fixed signs of the zodiac. And I don't want to give too much away, but Leone gives this away at the end of the film. He actually does something that is very unique, that cements these characters as these astrological archetypes. These are the three of the four fixed signs of the zodiac. Tuco would be Aquarius. I mean, for example, he spends the whole movie running around looking for water, searching for his water pitcher. Then you have Eastwood as Leo, and Van Cleef would be Scorpio. I don't want to give it away because I want people to read the book, but Leone does something very interesting at the end of the movie that confirms these astrological archetypal imagery in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Again, I'll wrap up on this. They're three of my all-time favorite movies, especially Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's probably one of my favorite, if not the favorite chapter that I wrote in Cinema Symbolism 2. And by all means, if you're interested in it, get the book and check it out. I'm just scratching the surface on it. There's a whole lot more going on inside those movies.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't sure where you were going until you were like Tuco's Aquarius, and I'm like, oh yeah, man, he's always running around looking for his water, his
That's
water
right.
thing. Yeah. So, when I watched that movie for the first time, I was a kid, my grandpa watched all these Westerns and stuff. And the one thing that for some reason always stuck with me is when Tuco comes out of the desert and he goes and he's like terrorizing the store, and he takes all the parts from the different guns and builds his own like custom gun. And I don't know why that's always stuck with me, but it always has. Like, is there any insight? Like, is that just something cool for a bad guy to do, or is
Right.
Leone telling us something about this imperfect, fallen from grace figure built like building or rebuilding something?
What's interesting with that is I know the exact scene you're talking about, and I'm with you. I saw this movie as a kid also. I saw this kid, as a movie probably in the mid to late 70s. And I thought it was like the greatest movie. As a kid, I was a junkie on the Universal horror movies. Like Lugosi's Dracula and Boris Karloff's Frankenstein or
Yep,
The Mummy.
yep.
I was also an addict of the Vincent Price films like Pit and the Pendulum, Mask of the Red Death. Probably Mask of the Red Death more than any other.
Yeah, man, that was
but
a good
certainly
one.
I saw the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I mean, I thought this was like the greatest movie that I ever seen. The whole thing of the gun actually ties into some of the archetypal imagery of Aquarius, invention, thinking on their feet. Both it has to do with Deacon and astrological symbolism tying into Aquarius. Again, I don't want to give too much away because I want people to read the book. But if you are familiar with archetype, some of the qualities that surround those three signs of the zodiac, those three characters really personify them very, very well. It's remarkable how, like I said, by the time he got to Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Leone had really perfected this. And I'll just wrap up on this real quick. This whole theme that I'm talking about right now with the Good and the Bad and the Ugly and these spaghetti westerns in general. And again, I'll get into it with you a little bit if you want to. Again, I don't want to give the whole book away.
Yeah, no, we can move on whenever. That's fine.
No, but I just want to add real quick that because this is something else I talk about in the book, these exact same themes, almost, are picked up years later by Martin Scorsese in his movie Gangs of New York. He uses this exact same sort of imagery and themes, underlying themes, to convey this exact same religious struggle going on inside Gangs of New York, which is another chapter of the book. So again, if you're interested in the spaghetti western, and you're interested in Gangs of New York, which is another great film. I think that movie's fantastic. By all means, pick up a copy of Cinema Symbolism. It's really a lot of deep Catholic, esoteric, and like I said, it's akin to me of cinematic Christian Kabbalism. And this would be Kabbalism spelled with a C, not a K. It's a lot of really deep, esoteric, arcane Roman Catholic imagery. I mean, it's no surprise Leone and Scorsese are both Catholics.
Right,
So,
right.
it shouldn't really come as too much of an alarm that this is going on inside those movies.
Yeah, and also like spaghetti westerns that came after, like actually like kicked some of this stuff up a notch and actually made it not so cool because they kind of like put it up to the forefront. Like I mentioned, Sergio Carbucci in the Django movie, especially the first one, he introduced the idea of the torture and basically he fucking crucified Django in this movie, and it's like he winds up, just like Fistful of Dollars, like he winds up coming back to like just get his bloody vengeance and all this kind of stuff.
Well, absolutely. You'll find you're absolutely right, John. I mean, I haven't seen that movie, but you have that theme in Fistful of Dollars. I mean, you even have it being resurrected in A Few Dollars More. Excuse me, in Good the Bad, where he's in the desert. I mean, it's like the scourging of the sun god.
He's out in the wilderness and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you think of Jesus in the desert with the devil. I mean, it's the same sort of imagery. It's not exact, of course. If it was exact, it would be blatantly obvious. Yeah. But these guys are definitely drawing on this biblical Christ allegory. I don't dispute it, no question about it.
And then, like, what a great student, Clint Eastwood was, because he went on to make movies like High Plains Drifter, which is probably my favorite Western of all time, because it's more of a horror ghost story than it is a Western, but, he does that same thing where he associates, like, the Red Horseman and as vengeance and all this kind of stuff, and then in Pale Rider, it's basically he
Grim
flipped,
Reaper. Basically.
yeah, he flips it and it was like he's death. You know, he even opens with that passage from Revelations, the quote from Revelations about, you know, death follows the man who rides the pale horse and all this kind of stuff. So, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I've seen both those movies, but it's been a while since I've seen them. But I mean, you're spot on with that. It's definitely a lot of biblical imagery going on. No question about it.
So, I don't know, like, I don't know where we should go next, because this book is just chock full of stuff that I want to talk about. I'm a huge Lynch fan, and I love the first 4 Dune books from Herbert.
Right.
So when I look at the Dune movie, I love it for different reasons. I kind of like partition it out where it's kind of its own thing. I don't think it like relates to what Frank Herbert wrote too much, but I love the movie for what it is. And I know that you have some stuff to say about that in a cinema symbolism too. Do you mind getting into Dune at all a little bit?
No, I could get into Lynch a little bit. By far and away, I took on 4 David Lynch movies. I wanted to take on more. I'm planning on doing Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me, and what's the other one? Wild at Heart. I'm saving those for Cinema Symbolism 2. I wanted to put them in, Cinema Symbolism 3, excuse me. I wanted to put them in Cinema Symbolism 2, but it would have gone on forever. I couldn't do it.
You could probably
go ahead, I'm sorry.
You could probably do a whole book just on Twin Peaks. Like,
oh, sure.
Yeah, it's chock full of good stuff.
I would say David Lynch, those movies are by far and away what I would describe as heavy lifting. I mean, you know, they are by far some of the most difficult movies to dissect. I did Blue Velvet, Dune, Lost Highway, which is just crazy, and Mulholland Drive, which is sort of almost a continuation of Lost Highway.
Yeah, they all kind of like smashed together in some places. Like there's always like the flickering light and the idea like something's coming through the electricity or something. You know, when I watch them now, I've seen them all so many times. I'm like, I don't know if I'm drawing imaginary lines or if they're supposed to be there. You know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, you know, like I was just gonna end up saying, like, I'm not sure if I'm seeing stuff that's not there or if I'm tying like mood and atmosphere together to make up some shit that I think might be in there, or if it's like that's part of his message, as part of like what he's saying are these things.
Well, he in Mulholland Drive, the whole thing with the cowboy is he's sort of like the wisdom bearer. He's the wisdom guy. He provides the wisdom. So of course when he brings enlightenment. So whenever he approaches, the light flickers on because he's bringing knowledge.
I see.
The guy, he's trying to straighten him out. But then he says to the movie producers, this is Mulholland Drive, this is the cowboy. Mm-hmm. He says if you see me once, you'll do good. He says if you see me twice, you've done bad. This is where Lynch really starts breaking down the lines, because at that point in time, he's speaking to Diane Selwyn, who is Naomi Watts, who's sleeping. And we know he's speaking to her, not the movie producer at that point, because she sees him 2 more times. She sees him when he's standing in her doorway saying, "Wake up, honey, you're dreaming." And then he sees her at the party, at the poolside party. He's walking around in the background. So he sees her twice, and of course she does bad because she puts the hit out on Carmela Rhodes. So by bringing the whole thing with the light is when he's coming, it flickers on, and then when he leaves, it flickers off, because he's bringing enlightenment. He's bringing light. He's the wisdom provider. Dune is great. I love Dune.
Yeah.
Dune is is by far and away, this is something I talk about in Cinema Symbolism and CS2, is this whole idea of the notion of the Joseph Campbell monomyth turning up in film. And of course, I think I'll probably talk to you about this the last time I was on with you, with this whole breakdown of the monomyth, these components, the hero's adventure, the Redeemer figure. You know, this is Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars films, Harry Potter, Frodo Baggins, Neo in the Matrix. The whole Paul Atreides character is the same thing. But by far and away, I mean, I would say to you, Dune, when it comes to Campbell's monomyth, I think Dune is really probably the premier movie to see these elements in. It is just so astounding to me how well those elements are conveyed. in that movie. I mean, Lynch does just such a great job with the whole idea of, the Redeemer figure, this Christ figure. I mean, Paul Atreides, he becomes reborn as Moadib. I mean, you have the whole supernatural aid element with the weirding way. You have the meeting of the sacred feminine, which is the sacred, which is the Sean Young character. Just absolutely fantastic when it comes to the monomyth. I mean, it's just all the elements are right there, all coming out of the collective unconscious. I mean, it's right there. I break it down for you in the movie. I mean, you got some other esoteric imagery going on inside that as well, inside that movie as well. I mean, I like the whole idea of the two mystery schools. One is mathematics. I mean, this, clearly is descending sort of from the Pythagorean mystery schools. One can't help but think of Freemasonry. And then you've got the Women's Secret Society. These are the Bene Gesserits. And of course, these are the manipulators behind the monarchy, trying to, pull the strings. Of course, the word Jesuit, resurrects the word Jesuit.
Right.
So you have that whole religious imagery going on. It's the sacred order. I love it how the Emperor Shaddam is in the solar throne room. I mean, if you pay attention at the beginning when he meets the guild navigator,
the stage 3 guild navigator,
right? Yeah, the stage 3 guild navigator is here. The whole throne room is solar. I think even if you look on his throne chair, it's got the rising sun. I mean, clearly, reflecting the solar throne room in the Versailles Palace. Great esoteric imagery there for Emperor Shaddam. I love it how Dune and Herbert and Lynch do the whole play on the whole play on the planets, where the one planet that is the wasteland is run by the Harkonnens, who are diseased. So the people who run the planet are mirroring the planet. That's one and the same. Where the Harkonnens run Gedi Prime, and it's a wasteland, and then you have the Atreides house running Caladan, which is the beautiful water planet.
Yeah.
Right. And then Dune is where the spice is, and to master the spice, you have to master the worms. So it's this whole parallel where the ruler of the planet reflects it. I thought that was very well done. I love Dune. I think it's a great movie, and it has some great imagery in it. No question about it.
Yeah, and like when Paul moves from Caladan to Arrakis, he's like the young, good-looking lad from Caladan, but eventually he turns into like this hardened warlord, because he's been roughed up by this desert planet, and these gigantic fucking worms and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing with like Luke Skywalker. He starts off as this farm boy and becomes this hardcore Jedi.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it's Frodo Baggins. He starts off as this, little guy, nobody, screwing around in the Shire, and becomes, this guy who's destroyed the One Ring.
Yeah, he's like, he turns into a tough little hobbit.
Exactly.
Yeah, I actually got in a little bit of heat one time because I described Star Wars as the Kmart version of Dune.
Well, it's funny because, I'll say I like the Star Wars movies. It's funny you bring that up because I think clearly, I think when Dune was being made, Dune came out after Star Wars. In fact, I think it came out after Empire.
Well, the movie, yeah, I'm talking about like
the movie.
Books.
I mean, obviously the book came out in the 60s, no question. I think the movie studio wanted another Star Wars
for sure,
and Lynch was like, no, I'm going to give you this Gnostic, story of inwardness and self determination and this inward journey and this solar savior figure. And I like the movie, but I think the studio wanted more Star Wars, and of course that's clearly not the case. I mean, I don't think Dune was intended to be watched by a little kid like where Star Wars would have been.
No, and it's funny. Robert? Have you ever read the books?
No, I have not.
No, they get real Gnostic. I believe in the fourth one, which is God Emperor of Dune, where it's basically the main character is this clone of Duncan Idaho, and he's been cloned like hundreds of millions of times because the Emperor keeps killing him and giving him a new job when he gets a new clone body, and eventually at the end he suffers, like he gets hurt, like he suffers this immense pain that's able it's able for him to like focus all of his past lives and remember all of his experiences from all of his different clones, basically making him like the Kwisatz Haderach. It's really super interesting if you're looking for like a weird Gnostic tale about experience leading to enlightenment. It's really good.
Yeah, and you have that exact sort of thing with the Paul Atreides figure. I mean, he's sort of like this Gnostic savior who's going to bring liberation to the people.
He goes where the Bene Gesserit cannot go within themselves.
Right. I mean, it's very eerily similar to Neo in the Matrix.
Right.
He's the the savior figure who's going to free mankind. Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely has these Gnostic overtones, and certainly with the spice, expanding consciousness. No question about it. I mean, I don't disagree with you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, man, it's such a good movie. And people laugh at it. People hate it, and I'm just like, how can you hate this? It's awesome.
I agree. I have it on Blu-ray. I think it's fantastic.
Hey, so we're gonna go ahead and take a break. I need to get a refill on my drink here. So, can you throw out some of your links and stuff, and then we'll duck out and do a commercial or two, and come right back.
Yeah, sure. Again, John, thank you for having me on the Abracast.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're interested in me, my books, Royal Arch of Enoch, Cinema Symbolism, Cinema Symbolism 2, check out my website, www.robertwsullivaniv.com. All connected, all lowercase, Sullivan with 2 L's, robertwsullivaniv.com. Links there to buy the book. It's on all major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, eBooks, Kindle, Nook, eBook Mall, Intera, Kobo, they're all there. EPUB editions, very cheap, much cheaper than the print editions. Links to buy the book, more information about me, links to social media, my Twitter, YouTube channel where I have tons of archived radio shows I've done. You can listen to other shows. That content is all 100% free. www.robertwsullivaniv.com.
Cool. And just hang tight. We'll be right back with Robert Sullivan IV. All right, so you guys know that we've been talking to Robert Sullivan IV, who has just released his new book, Cinema Symbolism 2, More Esoteric Imagery in Popular Movies. We just chewed up a lot of good stuff. So I know that you have a chapter, I think a whole chapter, maybe a chapter and plus, I don't know, about the dark Disney times, the dark decade of Disney or something like this.
Yeah, I have a chapter on Disney, but it covers a whole range of movies.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I get into movies. The one movie that I get into movies like Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent, the Witch Mountain movies. The one that was really going to break down was The Lion King. That has a ton of esoteric imagery in it. That was really interesting. They knew what they were doing when they put that together. But yeah, I have a whole chapter on Walt Disney. It's interesting material to say the least. Some of it gets a bad rap where it really shouldn't. I know that there is this whole theory out there that Walt Disney was a Freemason. He was not. He was involved in a group called De Molay, which is sort of like the Boy Scouts for Freemasons.
Oh, it was named after Jacques de Molay of the Knights
correct.
Templar, right?
That's absolutely right. And he was involved with that. It definitely left an influence with him, but he was not a Freemason. He was not in the Scottish Rite or anything like that. But his movies, when you're looking at Disney movies, I mean, some of it has some very deep arcane imagery, like The Lion King. But then some of it, it's just, some of it, he gets a bad rep where it's just an animator screwing around, basically.
Oh, you're talking about like the dildos and the Little Mermaid and this kind of stuff.
Right. I mean, you have the phallic symbols and shit in Little Mermaid. You had the one piece of pornography It was in the original one. They got rid of
it. Was in the Rescuers.
The Rescuers. That's right. And I actually saw that in the theater as a kid. And
it was like a little bit of it was like a little bit of Tyler Durden-esque kind of. Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. It was a piece of it was a still from a porno movie in the window that they were flying by, and they've edited it out. But it was just an animator screwing around, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it only takes like a blink of an eye. Like, why not make a joke? But I mean, I guess if you're Disney, you probably take that shit pretty personally, especially when someone finds it.
Found out about it, freaked out about it. But then you're right. I mean, it was something I was saving for Symbolism 3, but then. You're absolutely right. In the 70s, Disney sort of went away. They didn't know what to do.
Right.
They didn't know what to do. They had done all these fairy tale movies, so they went into this dark adolescent phase with movies, even like the Witch Mountain movies, which I talk about, but movies like The Black Cauldron and the one that's Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Something Wicked This Way Comes. That's right. Wasn't Jason
the Black Hole was another one. And they're very dark.
Yeah, Black Hole scared the shit out of me when I was a little kid.
Yeah, they're very dark movies, and Disney caught a lot of backlash about them because they were gearing these movies towards adolescents, but parents were still taking kids to them. And I mean, my father took me to see The Black Hole in the theater, and I'm watching. I'm like, what the hell is this thing?
there's like robot zombies, and they go to hell at the end, and there's guys trapped in a robot. You're just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I'm sitting there watching this as a kid. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? And and they caught a lot of backlash for it. But then I think it was 89, this is when the Disney Renaissance began, which was with The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid. Where every year they were putting out these animated movies that were just these absolute blockbusters. And sort of, I guess, the Pocahontas, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Aladdin. And I mean, I guess the one that's really in there that, was probably the biggest of them all was The Lion King, which I would say was 1994, and that has a lot in it.
All right, well,
I get into the Walt Disney stuff, and it's a whole chapter in the book. So again, if you're interested in esoteric imagery and Walt Disney movies, check it out.
Well, hey, do you mind scratching the surface on this Lion King then?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Because
we are dealing with a lot of Egyptian comparative religion with this. I mean, we have it in Africa. I mean, we clearly have the Mustafa character as the Osiris figure who is killed. Then he gets his solar heir, who would be Simba. This would be the horse character. You have the Uncle Scar character. This would clearly be the Set or Typhon character. So you have the lions being Leo the lion. Leo is the soul house of the sun. So of course we have the sun ruling over Africa. This is again, Egyptian iconography tying into this. Of course, when the sun is absent and the hyenas and Scar take over, the sun is there, so the Pride Lands turn to a wasteland. You'll find this imagery all the time in these solar allegory movies. King Arthur, Excalibur, when King Arthur is in decay, the sun is dying. In England, the whole country turns to wasteland.
Right.
You for that in Excalibur. Same thing going on in The Lion King. When the solar rulership is gone, the Pride Lands turn to a total dump. I like it in this. It's a real solar storyline. You have the solar lions, Leo. I like it. In that movie, in Lion King, they have this whole thing going on where, the soul house, the sun rises in the east, then in the south, it's at midday at noon in the south, and then it's the setting sun at the west. So you have these three stations of the sun, east, south, west. This is where the sun always resides. Rising sun, sun at midday, setting sun. This is why in a Masonic lodge, the worshipful master sits in the east, the junior warden sits in the south as the sun at midday, and the senior warden sits in the west as the setting sun. The one place that the sun can never go is in the north. The sun never occupies a northern station. And in The Lion King, they tell you that exactly, where the lions can't go to the elephant burial ground because it's in the north. And they say that's off limits. We can't go in there. The elephant burial ground that's the domain of darkness, and that's strictly off limits for the sun, and that's why the elephant burial ground is in the north. So we have this whole solar allegory going on in this, and then another thing that they tie into, that Walt Disney ties into with the Lion King, is it's a whole retelling of the Shakespeare tragedy or play Hamlet. Where you have the Mustafa as the ghostly king. Simba would certainly be Hamlet. You have the two figures, what is it, Timba and Pumbaa,
Something
who would
like
clearly be the Horatio friendly type figures. I mean, Uncle Scar is obviously the evil Uncle Claudius. So you have this whole Hamlet undercurrent as well going on inside the Lion King. So we have Egyptian solar symbolism and Hamlet. No wonder this wasn't the second highest grossing movie of 1994. I think only coming in second to Forrest Gump. So a lot of esoteric imagery going on inside the Lion King, and it's very well presented.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I know that whenever you go on shows and stuff, people ask you about Kubrick and The Shining, so I'm just going to kind of skip over that. I mean,
sure.
Yeah. But you did.
That's no problem.
Yeah, but you do talk about something that intrigues me, again, because I'm wrapped up in the 70s movie genre mode. You mentioned there's something hidden to be seen in The Warriors, and that's the Walter Hill directed gang stuck in the wrong side of New York, and all the,
one of my favorite movies.
All the bad guy gangs are trying to get them, and they're trying to get the fuck out of there and get back home to wherever, Coney Island or wherever they're supposed to go.
Right.
So I was wondering if you could kind of scratch the surface on that for us. I mean, it's such a great movie.
The Warriors is another one of my favorite all-time movies. When I break down movies, one of the top talking points that I always wind up going to is Gnostic movies.
Right.
Movies like The Matrix or The Truman Show.
Oh yeah.
Or Fight Club.
Right.
And what I say about The Warriors is I wouldn't categorize it as a Gnostic movie at all. I mean, I wouldn't put it in the vein of, like The Matrix or Fight Club, but it definitely flirts with Gnosticism. And what I mean by that, it definitely has some unique imagery in it. I mean, I like the Warriors. They're going to the meeting in Coney Island. They're from Coney Island. They're going to the meeting with all the other gangs.
In Central Park, right?
I don't think it's Central Park. I believe it's it's actually in the Bronx.
Okay.
They were going to a park in the Bronx. And there's a truce, and all these other gangs are meeting, but they're not going to fight with each other. They're going to go to listen to this gang warlord named Cyrus.
He's trying to unite them all.
Correct.
Yeah.
And he's the head of this one gang in the Bronx, this real powerful gang called the Gramercy Riffs. And it's interesting that they gave this guy the name Cyrus, because this is clearly paralleling a Persian emperor named Cyrus the Great, who was trying to do the exact same damn thing, who's trying to unify all of Persia under one banner. So you have Cyrus trying to unify all the gangs in New York under one banner. Interesting name to give to him. Yep. Definitely imagery, esoteric imagery there. But then you have the whole idea of the Warriors. It's this whole idea of them battling through this nighttime adventure, this sort of quest. I kind of think of Alice in Wonderland or Dorothy Gale in Oz, where they're trying to seek this higher enlightenment, or they're trying to get back home, but in the process they get this higher enlightenment. You have them, the Warriors, of course, they're warlike. You have the introduction of the sacred feminine in this movie, who is dualistic. She is Mercy. I mean, that's her name. And of course, that's the total polar opposite of being warriors or warlike. She's benevolence and love. Her name is Mercy, suggesting mercy. So you have this dualistic Gnostic paradigm with love versus warrior. So she's the sacred feminine who plays off of them, and they play off of her. You have them battling to get back home to Coney Island, and it's sort of this quest of enlightenment. And when they finally get back home to, and like I said, don't get me wrong, I would not categorize this as a Gnostic movie, but it definitely flirts with it. Where they finally get back home to Coney Island, and it's this great scene where the rising sun is coming up over the horizon, of course, bringing light or enlightenment. And he's standing there looking out at this totally piece of shit Coney Island, this dilapidated hellhole. And he says, I mean, this is it. He says, is this what we fought all night to get back to? And it's this rejection of the material world. He now realizes that this is all bogus and that gang banging and materialism is no good. And he has this Gnostic epiphany, and that's exactly what it is. And it's, again, you know, we talk about, John, the name of Cyrus, referencing this Persian emperor. It's fascinating that they give this gang leader the name of Swan, of all things.
Oh, okay.
Because in the mystery tradition, Swan is the initiate. That's the initiate into the mystery tradition, is what is called a swan. And the swan bird actually associates with an initiate into a mystery, or an initiate into a Gnostic riddle, or a mystery school. So, I mean, it's a fascinating name to give to him. And, of course, he has this Gnostic epiphany that gang-banging materialism is bogus. It's no good. And this is exactly what happens. He walks away from it. You know, he confronts the rogue leader and says, I'm out of here. Goodbye, gang-banging. Goodbye, material world. Goodbye, you know, this material turf that I'm wasting my life fighting over. It's garbage. So he has this sort of Gnostic revelation at the end there. It's a fantastic movie. It's, like I said, it's one of my all-time favorites, and it definitely flirts with these esoteric Gnostic themes. I dissect it more in the book, so, you know, definitely check it out. It definitely has some imagery that's eye-catching, no question about it.
Yeah, and they set up that dualism kind of early, where they make it known that there's like a war chief and like a peacetime chief within the gang. So I don't know if that's figured into your formula or not, but I just kind of thought about that.
Well, and I like it how also they have the other gangs that they're fighting to get through are sort of like almost like a reflection of them. I mean, you know, like the Baseball Furies, you know, you think of New York, the Lizzies, who are the female gang. You know, I just really like, you know, you have the one gang who's not even on the orphans, you know, who are sort of low life.
Right.
So you had this whole hierarchy of gangs, sort of this hierarchy of spiritual enlightenment. I thought it's a great movie no matter what. If you've never seen The Warriors, by far, check it out. It's a fantastic movie. But if you're watching it, pay attention to these sort of Gnostic enlightenment themes going on. They're definitely, like I said, I would not categorize it as a Gnostic film in the vein of The Matrix or The Truman Show or Fight Club. But it definitely flirts with Gnosticism. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, you know, I when we opened up the program, I was talking about how I was using Taxi Driver as kind of like one of my templates for one of the books I'm working on. And it's funny because in the last show we did together, way back in episode number 3, I opened the whole thing up by saying, you know, my worldview is so fluid. I see Gnosticism everywhere. And when I look at Travis Bickle and the situation he's in, I see a divine spark trapped in a world of shit, you know, fucking going crazy, trying to get enlightenment, you know. So, like, you know, I don't think that's too far of a stretch to say, like, this gang trying to get to their homeland, you know, is or is not flirting with Gnosticism. Just depends on, you know, what you think that sunrise means, or like what you think, you know, does he go on to be like a senator or something afterward? Like, what do you think the guy does when he gets when the movie stops? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I really liked it in The Warriors, how there was, you know, what kind of cinched it for me. You know, and I guess it's sort of, you know, with, you have to be, you know, I try to be, you know, when I looked at that movie, I definitely saw this sort of rejection of the way he was, and he wanted something better, you know, whether that's spiritual gnosis or something like that, you know, that's kind of left up in the air. And like I said, what I saw in that movie was sort of this, you know, journey that results in this Gnostic epiphany where he's rejecting materialism.
Yeah.
And that to me, and he was aided by this sacred feminine Sophia character, you know, who's dualistic. You know, you think of Manichaeanism, light versus dark, male and female, you know, and of course they're the warriors, they're warlike, and she's mercy. So I thought that was a great interplay there. And like I said, you know, certainly I, you know, understand where you're coming from. For me personally, when I think of Gnostic movies, to me it's like The Matrix, you know, and Fight Club, and The Truman Show. And like I said, I don't know if I'd really categorize the Matrix up there. I mean, excuse me, the Warriors up there, but I would definitely have no problem saying it flirts with it.
Right.
I mean, that I'd go along with.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we scooch out of here? Any pet ones that we didn't touch on that you might want to talk about? I know V for Vendetta.
Yeah, well, I'll just give a brief overview of the book. I mean, the book is a sequel to the first book, so we take on a whole new slate of movies in this. I do. There is a whole Alan Moore chapter for V for Vendetta, From Hell, and Watchmen. I get into the Western movies we've already talked about. I dissect all the Harry Potter movies. I dissect all the Chronicle of Narnia movies. This was something I wanted to do in the first book, but it would have gone on forever. Certainly in the first book, I talk about the J.R.R. Tolkien films, The Lord of the Rings, that is. I wanted to do The Hobbit, but that's going to have to wait till CS3. But I did I got C.S. Lewis. I really wanted to talk about him, so I did the 3 Narnia movies that have come out. I talk about the David Lynch movies. I do 4 David Lynch films. I do the Walt Disney chapter. I have a whole chapter on horror films. Again, The Shining. I know you didn't want to get into that. That's fine. I get into movies like Suspiria, Angel Heart, Jacob's Ladder.
Angel Heart. Oh, Angel Heart and Jacob's Ladder?
I get into those.
Wow.
I get into Crimson Peak. That there's some really unique imagery going on in that. I talked about in the first book, Black Swan, and I promised that this was a movie that I was going to re-dissect through this alchemical storyline. So I get into Black Swan again. Gangs in New York. I get into the archetypal imagery of Robin Hood. That has a lot of Tarot imagery and Kabbalistic imagery as well.
Which version?
So, I mean, we could never get into all this in one night, but those are some of the movies I get into. And if you're interested, by all means, check out the book.
Which version of Robin Hood are we talking about? The Russell Crowe or the Kevin Costner or? I mean,
either the Errol Flynn one.
Oh, the Errol Flynn. Okay, I was gonna follow that up with saying like they reboot them every 10 years now, so it's hard to keep track of which ones we're talking about. But you went back to the old school.
Well, it's funny because some of these early movies have some of the best archetypal imagery of them all. The Robin Hood, the Errol Flynn Robin Hood is fantastic. I mean, that's got it all. For your tarot iconography, you've got it starts out with the Ace of Cups reversed with the spilt wine. You have the whole magician and fool cards, which is Robin Hood and Will Scarlet. You've got the devil card in there. A great tarot iconography ties into a lot of Hebrew Kabbalah as well. I mean, you'll find this in the subsequent movies. I think of the John. I mean, I know I saw this on Facebook with you. They're remaking all the King Arthur movies. Really, the best one for the astrological and solar allegories is the Excalibur movie by Borman.
Man, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think about when I think. There are some topics. Well, I'm against remakes forever in a day. You know, I'm a creator, so I'm like, let's get some new shit up there anyways.
I'm with you.
But when I think like certain things like King Arthur or like shark movies, I'm like, never do a shark movie. You're never going to do good as Jaws, you know?
Right.
And it's the same thing with that Excalibur. Like, they just snuck this bullshit Charlie Human, whatever, King Arthur movie on us. When it's like, why? Like, why are you doing this? They just try, like, the guy who did Training Day just tried to do this to us 15 years ago. Like, he tried to do another King Arthur movie. And I'm like, just Excalibur is the best. Like,
yeah, I agree with you. And Excalibur really does have the imagery in it. That's what's great about it. But I'm with you. I mean, I guess there are some movies that, they're going to remake, like Dracula.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, like, I like the Lugosi version, but I like the Christopher Lee one as well.
Right.
But I'm with you. I mean, leave the shark movie alone. I know they couldn't help themselves and they remade Rosemary's Baby for TV. I mean, it's like, why? I mean, the first one, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's the story.
Yeah. And it's never.
And I'm with you. I mean, get some new stuff out.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, I guess it's just, inevitable. I guess Hollywood just can't leave certain things alone. And I guess if enough time goes by, I suppose 50 years from now or whatever, in 5 years we'll get another Dracula movie.
So
I know what they're doing, The Mummy now.
Yeah.
So and then now they're saying they're going to redo all these.
Yeah.
They're going to redo Frankenstein and Dracula, the Wolfman.
They're going to marvelize them. They're going to make them all into their own shared universe or whatever. So
I don't know. Yeah, the Dark Universe, it's supposed to be called.
Yeah. So my question to you is like, look, I'm not a movie analyzing or judging like podcast or whatever, but I have a question for you though about this, like the constant remakes and stuff, and obviously you've had to deal with it. Like, do you feel like the older movies are more pure than like the newer movies? Like, when I think of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was my Robin Hood movie when I was growing up, and then I look at this Russell Crowe, the Scott Free Productions one, where it's all like apologetic towards Islam and stuff.
Right.
Like, do you feel like the older ones are more, I guess, pure, or like not full of a bunch of apologetics or political correctness? Do you stumble into some of this stuff when you look at these movies?
Well, I think the earlier ones definitely don't have the political correctness, because that's like a product of the 90s. Even now, I don't know if you saw this or not. This is just insanity, where now they're on the rerun on TBS of Back to the Future, they're editing out the word terrorist. Which is just sickening.
The Iranians.
The Back to the Future movies are movies that I take apart in the first book, and you will know that whole terrorist theme has to do with Ronald Reagan. The Doc Brown character is a Ronald Reagan analog, and that whole thing with Doc Brown with the terrorists is parodying or imitating this whole thing with Libya, but it has nothing to do with now that in this politically correct world, which seems to be the tides turning on it. Now they want to edit that out. That's just insanity. What I would say to you is, when it comes to movies, some movies have esoteric imagery, some don't, and it spans time. I could show you movies that were made in the 40s and 50s that are great movies that really don't have any esoteric imagery. I think of movies like Key Largo with Humphrey Bogart and Edward G. Robinson. It's a great film. It's one of my all-time favorites. But then you can have modern films that do have it. Some do, some don't. For me, it's watching the film, seeing if there's esoteric imagery, most importantly, putting it in its proper context, and then I can go ahead and try to dissect it. But, certainly the time frame that the movie's made can certainly mirror the society of when it was made.
Well, you got to kind of.
I don't dispute that.
You got to kind of put it in context, right? Like, if you're going to go back and do like a scholarly analysis of, Die Hard or something, like, you kind of have to look at and I think that's something that this podcast does, actually, when we talk about history and stuff, is we do a lot of like background and like, this is why this thing happened and this is why this thing happened, which led to this kind of thing. Because you put some of those old movies on, if you made like a transcription of them and posted them on Facebook, they'd seem like a fucking Hitler rally. You know what I mean? And it was just the way that people talked back then or whatever.
Oh, sure. You watch, you watch a movie that came out like Yankee Doodle Dandy with Jimmy Cagney. It's clear propaganda. No question about it.
Right.
Sure. My goodness gracious. You go back and watch some movies. They talk and say things you could never say anymore.
I always think of Blazing Saddles.
Oh, Blazing Saddles! How about Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd?
Yeah.
There's dialogue in there you could never have today.
No, yeah. I think we're becoming a little too enlightened for our own good. That's just my opinion.
Oh, it could be.
So, hey man, Robert W. Sullivan IV, I want to thank you so much for coming on. You're a super interesting guy to talk to, and I'm sorry that it took so long to get you back on. But I think that everyone who's listened to this is interested in these kind of things for sure, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. And I just hope you guys all seek out this book or these books from Robert. We're talking about the Royal Ark of Enoch. We're talking about Cinema Symbolism 1 and Cinema Symbolism 2. You're talking to a guy who knows what he's talking about, and the movies that he picks to do they're dynamic and they come out of left field sometimes, but I think that he really has something to say about a lot of this stuff. And thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any? How about give out your links one last time, buddy?
Sure. Well, thank you, John, for having me on. I appreciate you having me on the Abercast. I thought the podcast was fantastic. Yeah, we did this about a year ago almost. And like I said, it was good to do it, again, to talk about the new book. So thank you very much for having me on.
Sure.
Anytime you want to have me on, we'll do this again, of course. Certainly when Cinema Symbolism 3 or my first work of fiction comes out, we'll do it. Yeah, absolutely. If you enjoyed tonight's show, go to my website. If you're interested in the books, there's links there to buy them. My website is my name again. My name is Robert W. Sullivan IV, so my website is just that. It's www.robertwsullivaniv.com. That's the letter I, the letter V for the fourth, robertwsullivaniv.com. All my books are available on all the major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, on all the overseas sites for these exact same web pages, retailers. The ebooks are out, Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble Nook, places like eBook Mall, Inkterra, Kobo. They all have it. Again, links to buy the books, links to follow me on Twitter, links to my YouTube channel. You can check out other radio shows and podcasts I've done. Information about me, information about upcoming shows I'm doing. It's all there. It's very easy to navigate. www.robertwsullivaniv.com.
Well, thanks again for coming on, man. I really, like I said, I really appreciate it. And I know that you said that you're working on number 3. Do you have, I don't know, some like spoilers? Like what kind of movies are you looking at for number 3 that maybe we could get caught up on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually right now finishing off. I'm not finished it. I'm probably about 75% through it. I'm working my first work of fiction. That's the next thing I will have out. Its working title is A Pact with the Devil. That I will probably stay with that. It's a work of fiction. It has murder in it. It has the occult. It has conspiracy. It's erotic. It's good stuff. So that's my next book. Once that's done, I've already started outlining Cinema Symbolism 3. Some of the material I'll take on, I'm going to do the David Lynch movies or the Twin Peaks, and Fire Walk with Me and Twin Peaks. Fire Walk with Me and the one with Nicolas Cage. Wild at Heart. I'm going to do those 3, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, and Wild at Heart. I'm going to do some more of the Disney movies. I'm going to dissect a television show called Bates Motel. Some interesting stuff going on in that. I'm going to talk about Star Wars Episode 7. So, yeah, good stuff coming up for the next cinema book.
All right, cool. I know that you don't talk about movies that you haven't seen, but I would suggest you look into the Prometheus sequel, Alien Covenant, because I think there's some stuff there that you might pick up on or whatever.
I plan on doing. I get asked all the 3 movies. Some of the 3 movies I get asked about all the time are Interstellar, Prometheus, and this new Alien movie. So I definitely plan on checking them out.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, hey man, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I love having you on the show. I feel like you're the kind of guy that we could just talk for like 3 hours if we had enough movies to talk about. So, I really appreciate that. And like I said, thank you so much. And hopefully, we can, drive some, points towards your end of the field there and get you some purchases. And thanks so much again. I appreciate it. And next time, when your next book comes out, just let me know, and it's yours whenever you want to come on. Whenever you feel like you got some shit to talk about, just let me know.
All right, thanks, John. I really appreciate you having me on. Great to be on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And this will probably be up tonight, actually. I think I'm gonna.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna package it up and put it on up there tonight. So
if you're gonna put it on the Abercast and you put it up tonight, just email me the link on Facebook, and I'll start spreading it around in the next 24 hours. I'll probably put it on Twitter tonight, but I'll probably start spreading it around in the next 24 hours. I definitely will, no question. That's
cool. My last episode was about the Kennedys, and I'm looking at my numbers, and I'm like, oh, people don't like me talking shit on the Kennedys. So So
Okay.
I'm looking to get back on track.
If you put it up, just email me the link on Facebook, and I will definitely start spreading it around. If I don't get to it tonight, believe me, I'll definitely start putting it around tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So thanks a lot again, and here we go. We're gonna disengage. We're gonna.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. This story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Jin Jihad. The Jin Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization and their ultimate weapon, a corrupted, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jin Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.